Hello, Internet friends. I'm King 5 Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett, and we've got a heat advisory on our way this weekend. I'm sure you got the memo. I'm going to give you some details and some of the science behind it that will help you stay more informed and, importantly, more safe as we go into the warmest weekend of the year so far. Heat advisory will be kicking in at noon on Saturday, staying in place until at least 11 p.m. on Sunday, and that is for virtually all of western Washington. The only exceptions being really right along the northern edge of the Olympic Peninsula and up towards Northern Sound as well. All the way out to the coast, though, it's going to be abnormally warm. We'll talk about the temperatures in a moment. I want to show you a scene from Thursday. Lots of blue sky out there, a few clouds, but way more blue than we've seen in a good long while. Well, what's the difference? What makes blue sky happen? And more importantly, what makes those temperatures warm? Well, it's all about low pressure and high pressure. Now, we throw around the terms low pressure and high pressure all the time, but most folks really don't have an understanding. In fact, when I first got into the weather business, I thought that high pressure meant that it was going to be stormy. High pressure, right? No, it's actually low pressure that's associated with storms and high pressure that's associated with tranquil weather. Well, why? Well, it's actually pretty easy stuff. High pressure has a tendency, and you've heard me say this 1,000 times, flow around a low is counterclockwise, flow around a high is clockwise. Now, if you're under the age of 30, you might want to stop real quick and Google what a clock is and then come back and rejoin us. But basically what happens with high pressure is it sits at the surface and disperses. See how the arrows are kind of pushing away there? It clears out the lower atmosphere and makes the sky blue. Now it's pulling air from way up high where it was cool, but as it drops, it warms. So when it hits the surface, it's warming, it's creating a situation where it dries any condensation or cloud cover out there. Now, of course, exactly the opposite is true with low pressure. Low pressure has a tendency to gather and bunch. That counterclockwise flow will pull in all of the air around it and send it up. Well, as it's going up, it's cooling. And as it's cooling, condensation forms, and that's what creates clouds. So high pressure is usually associated with tranquil weather, low pressure, usually associated with storms. So basically, in a nutshell, in case you're a visual learner, the air at the surface gets pulled into the center. That's called convergence with low pressure, and that air rises and cools. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, wait a minute, doesn't warm air rise? Yes, in a room, but in the atmosphere, remember, as you go up into the atmosphere, you know how it's cold on top of a mountain? There's less pressure out there, and so that air cools. The condensation creates the clouds because as cooling air rises, it creates that condensation and pulls in that moisture with it. That's associated with cool and inclement weather. Well, exactly the opposite is true with high pressure. The air at the surface, not way up into the atmosphere, but at the surface, when it hits there, gets pushed away from the center, obviously called divergence. And as that air falls, it warms, the opposite of cool air, and that evaporation, the opposite of condensation, kills clouds. Any moisture that's at the surface there gets eaten up by that warm, dry air, and that's why the sky is generally blue around high pressure. Now, that's associated with warm and fair weather. Now you know the mechanics behind it. Let's take a look at it in motion here. So this is what's actually happening this weekend. Big ridge of high pressure, clockwise flow, and a low pressure system that's off the coast are going to meet head on, and we're going to be right in between. So let me preface by saying this. It's not going to get as hot as it did last year. You remember the 28th is the anniversary of Seattle hitting 107, 108. That high pressure was actually located right here, and it was basically on top of us, and that's why British Columbia, Washington, and Oregon were as hot as they were. This one's going to come up and get close, but as it approaches that low pressure system, this low pressure system's bigger, it's stronger, it's got more momentum behind it, so this high will stick around for a couple days and then gently get nudged off towards the east there and allow some cooler air and some moisture to move in along with it. But as long as this is in place this weekend, or I should be doing this, as long as this is in place this weekend, it looks like it's going to be warm and dry. So putting future radar into motion here, take a look at this. It's about what you don't see. You don't see any cloud cover. You don't even see any fog or anything over top of Puget Sound. Now, you do see some moisture along the coast. A couple things going on there. Remember, sea surface temperatures are about 50 degrees there, and you've got some moisture that's trying to push in off the Pacific, but look at what happens when it arrives here. We pushed to about 8:30 on Saturday morning, and again, clear for the most part. You see some moisture along the coast, but as it tries to move towards us, that high pressure is like, denied. You see, did it again there. Basically, as it moves towards the high's got enough dry air that it eats that and just keeps it offshore there until that low finally moves through and starts to push some moisture our way. And again, it'll do that on Tuesday. In fact, as you take a look at high temperatures over the next 5 days, Friday gets in the mid-70s, nice. 82 on Saturday, nice. Then it gets hot. Sunday and Monday, 86, 89. Again, nothing compared to what we experienced last year, but still, in the Pacific Northwest, that is hot. And it'll be a bit on the humid side because we're going to be doing a lot of evaporating and condensating while we're doing that. But relief moves in on Tuesday as that low pressure system finally moves overhead and puts temperatures back into the mid-70s yet once again. Another thing we've been saying a bunch of times, and I know a lot of people roll their eyes whenever we tell them this because, yeah, everybody knows that the water is cold, but it's the difference between the air and the water that's going to be a big deal over the next couple of days. So when it pushes into the mid to upper 80s, folks are going to want to swim. Puget Sound currently about in the mid 50s right now. Lake Washington in the low 60s. Lake Sammamish is in the mid 60s. And rivers, that is melted snow. So yeah, they're running around mid to low 40s there. So just be very, very careful. Wear a life preserver and keep an eye on each other because hypothermia can set in almost instantly. So take a look at the big picture here. This is high pressure. You can see just absolutely nothing going on over top of the Pacific Northwest. Oregon is in on some of that, but you can also see that low that's pushing in our direction. And if you want to see a classic low, take the one that's in Alberta right now. You can see that counterclockwise flow and the associated frontal boundary throwing some storms up into Manitoba and central Canada in the middle of summer. Take a look at this. We zoom in. Again, a whole lot of nothing going over top of the Pacific Northwest, and it's been a while since we've been able to say that. So here's what to expect over the next 7 days here. Another thing about clear air is it cools very efficiently overnight. So even though it's getting warm in the daytime, it's cooling quite a bit at night. So we will be tucking into the 40s. And then as we go into the weekend, some mid to upper 50s overnight. 82 on Saturday becomes 86 on Sunday, 89 on Monday. And then we're going to cool next week and get ourselves closer to where we should be this time of year, and may even get a few raindrops Tuesday and Wednesday. And now let's take a look at how Western Washington prepared for the heat wave this weekend.
It's perfect weather.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm so happy the sun is shining today.
Yeah.
A parked ice cream truck is a surefire sign that summer is here.
That is a big factor, the weather. As people ask us here, when are you going to be here? We just said we're watching the sunshine.
The couple behind Cosmic Ice Cream always wanted to run a food truck and use the pandemic as a sign from the universe to try something new.
A waffle? Okay. Perfect.
Something scary.
We really needed something to kind of happen to push us
Yeah.
a little further.
So on the longest day of the year, the first day of summer, they'll take all the customers Mother Nature can provide.
Thank you. Thank you.
Summer finally revealing itself after a long, wet winter and spring. Warmer temperatures that may remind you of last year, when unprecedented triple-digit temperatures just about sent air conditioners flying off the shelves.
Bro, last summer was ridiculous.
So, in response, McLendon Hardware has beefed up supply. Did so weeks ago. Say they're ready for the next rush as temperatures spike.
We're ready to go, for sure.
While a heat wave may be around the corner, experts don't think we'll hit triple digits again anytime soon.
Want it in a cone or a cup?
Good news for a couple that plans to make their living out of the back of a truck.
I'm looking forward to just a normal summer where people feel calm and relaxed and happy and looking forward to life to be enjoyed.
When heat waves arrive, they can hit some communities harder than others. King 5's Natalie Swaby explains why extreme heat can be more dangerous depending on your zip code.
It is so hot.
This Portland native goes by one name, Bird,
Hi, how are you?
and she's on one mission,
Thank you so much.
to help her community survive the next heat wave.
Wow. Are they pretty light?
Oh, yeah.
Because she says the death toll from the last one is so devastating.
They said, well, the number's 116. I said, you got to be kidding me. And so from there, I was tuned all the way in.
Here they are.
She began taking matters into her own hands.
I just grab a card and I fill out the names, addresses, phone numbers of folks. We were able to help get fans and air conditioners to about 200 people.
More than 100 deaths across the Pacific Northwest.
It is Portland's all-time record high ever.
Punishing heat in the Pacific Northwest led to pavement buckling, a streetcar cable melting. At hospitals, there were thousands of emergency room visits, and there were hundreds of deaths. A recent study examining heat exposure in urban areas across the country found that that kind of extreme heat can be more dangerous depending on your zip code.
There are certain areas that are hotter than others. That's for sure. You seriously could start East County and drive your way through Portland in the Southwest and feel the difference in temperatures. It's ridiculous.
That's because places with less tree canopy, more pavement, and large buildings retain heat, creating urban heat islands like you find in Portland's Albina area, where Bird's family has roots.
It's a layered issue that did not have to happen.
Part of that layered issue involves redlining. It was banned in 1968, but for decades, redlining was a common discriminatory practice of disinvestment, with lenders being discouraged from issuing mortgages in certain neighborhoods. In Portland, banks used this map to highlight what they considered the city's best areas in green and hazardous areas in red. Albina, with a large black population at the time, was formerly redlined, with the particular hazard being listed as racial. And back then, there were restrictions on where communities of color could live because of covenants.
And it would say things like no Negro, no Mexicans, no Japanese could buy a home. These signs are all part of the historic Black Williams Art Project.
Kayeen Talton Davis and her husband Cleo live in Albina and say over the years a community was built here.
This sign is about the Urban League, and this really kind of talks about equal housing.
But racist housing policies of the past, combined with construction projects that demolished homes, led to more pavement and less parks, making Albina disproportionately warmer today.
Between the 1950s and 60s is when the Oregon Department of Transportation began running highways. I-5 just ran a trench right through our neighborhood.
Right now, Lower Albina is mostly concrete, and concrete definitely holds more heat.
There are studies tracking neighborhood temperatures here in Portland.
So this is looking at the temperature results for the afternoon and the evening.
And in King County, too.
These paved areas heat up during the middle of the day.
A year ago, Laura Whiteley-Bender, King County's climate preparedness specialist, was part of a heat mapping project. On a July day, drivers set out on 15 predetermined routes at the same time, collecting temperature data and coming up with these results. North Seattle in light blue was much cooler than South Seattle. It was also hotter along the Renton, Kent, and Auburn corridor, all places where there are larger populations of communities of color. Across the county, at the same point in time, there was a nearly 24-degree difference.
We were expecting to see the urban heat island effect. I think we were surprised at how large the temperature difference was. We were also surprised just to see how clearly it stood out.
That's why when temperatures hit triple digits in June, the heat was more deadly in some zip codes than others.
As the event set up, it was sobering.
Have we seen temperatures like that here before?
We have not. We broke our records in multiple ways. We know with climate change that we expect to see, and we are seeing, more frequent, more intense heat wave events.
Every time I think about it, people died because they were hot in their homes. It makes no sense to me.
There are efforts underway in Washington and Oregon to plant more trees and find long-term solutions.
I've been out until like 1:30 in the morning delivering air conditioners and fans.
But Bird has no time to wait. She's too busy getting ready for the next round of unhealthy heat.
What we do know, there's going to be another heat wave. And so now you have some of the folks who have been the most targeted, living in an area where you can't even get relief from heat. It's very sad.
That's why she's here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Doing all she can.
That's what it's all about. I cannot read another report that a person died because of heat. That's crazy.
If you or someone you know doesn't have air conditioning, you're not alone. King 5's Jake Wittenberg explains how to make a do-it-yourself air conditioner for under $15.
All right, we need to find ways to cool off in these temperatures, don't we? I've got a pretty ingenious way of making a portable air conditioner for less than $15. It may just be one trip to the store, too. Check this out.
You really only need 3 things. Find a cooler, maybe it's a styrofoam cooler just laying around. I found this compostable one for $10, which was a good find. You need 2 dryer vents. I got these at a hardware store for $2 a piece. And you'll need a small fan. Use one that you already have, or if you can find one, they're not that expensive. Now grab your cooler and trace a line to cut a hole for a dryer vent on the side. Remember to always slice away from your body, and once you've got that hole cut, fit a dryer vent inside. Now do the same thing for the other side of the cooler. Next up is the fan. Time to cut a hole for that on top.
And you want to make sure that you're cutting this hole for the fan just a little bit smaller than the actual size of the fan itself so that it doesn't fall through into the cooler. Now, before you put on the lid in the fan, you've got to make the inside of the cooler cold, right? I just grabbed whatever ice pack I could find, stuff it inside your cooler. You could even use frozen food, make sure that doesn't go to waste. You've got to make it cold. Now, time to put on the fan.
The air should flow out of the dryer vents.
It's actually really cold, and it can get colder depending on how much ice or ice packs you put in your cooler. Obviously, the fan will work for some breeze, but when you need to cool down with these really hot temperatures, you might want to try this. Jake Wittenberg, King 5 News.